Right. We are 8 months into a Biden presidency, Jesse. Wrap your head around that. We still have 3 years and 4 months left. Look, when President Trump was president, you didn't see crisis after crisis. You just didn't see it. I shudder to think about what COVID would have been like under Joe Biden. We've seen Afghanistan blow up, crime in the streets, you named it all. What would COVID have been like? Because I was in the White House when it was pretty scary times. We weren't sure if we'd have enough ventilators.
Yeah, it was pretty scary times. Didn't like basically all of you have COVID during those times? Oh God, what would have happened if Biden had been in charge? I don't know, would 600,000 Americans have died in a very short period? That would have been devastating. Can you imagine? I can't conceive of it. I grew up watching sci-fi and even I can't wrap my head around these possibilities. But anyway, that's Kayleigh McEnany, who's been gone for a bit. She's terrible. She just lies. That's her entire thing. But anyway, she said back then you hadn't had crisis after crisis after crisis. We decided to do a bit of digging, JR. But before we get into that, what do you think about her commentary there?
Yeah, before you get to the crisis after crisis. So we didn't have all these issues. She contradicted herself in the same sentence. First, she said, can you imagine how bad it would be it wouldn't have been this bad under the Trump administration. I mean, we had shortage of ventilators and people couldn't get to the hospital and people were dying. You just said you had shortage of ventilators. That's a good thing. Was that it getting bad or was that it getting okay? Because I think the people who were on the ventilators, who most times after that passed away, and you had a shortage of those things, I see that as a bad situation. Despite what you just said, it was so good under the Trump administration. We had people couldn't even get to a ventilator. It was awesome.
I don't know. You sent a whole bunch of people to attack the Capitol. That was under your administration, actually. That was on the 6th. But anyway, she said there had been crisis after crisis, and it was so long ago, nobody remembers what happened back then. So I did a little bit of digging. By the way, so in all reality, we're gonna walk through a couple of these little crises. All I did was just think for a sec, what are some of the big ridiculous things that happened? You could do hundreds of these. But I recall a few crises, like for instance, when he suggested that we inject bleach into our bodies to stop COVID from affecting us. That seemed like a big issue. Now, it was a small moment in months and months of crises happening over and over, but there were other ones. You can go back a little bit further. Remember when they were like forcibly separating families just to convince people south of our border that we were so cruel that whatever horrible situation you have in your country, it's better than coming to America. That was the message we wanted to send. Or, the time that he so desperately wanted to take this photo that they decided they would brutalize peaceful protesters, buzz them with helicopters and gas them out so that he could hold a Bible upside down and stare ahead like he had no idea what a Bible or a book even was. Or the time when the weather wasn't really going the way he wanted, so he decided, I say where the weather's going, so I'll Sharpie a weather map. Look, these are not necessarily even the most devastating and substantive of crises, but you cannot pretend that there wasn't crisis after crisis after crisis, because it was constant.
Well, this is an indication of the way that they approach things. Those weren't crises because they didn't call them crises. They just said that was Trump derangement syndrome for anyone who brought up all of those crises that happened during his administration. They brought up how he was acting. They brought up the first thing he did was completely go racist and go through some policies putting forward against any Latino immigrants. How about that part? How about the lies about how they're coming to destroy the country and these caravans? All these lies that were constantly pitting other folks against certain groups of people. None of that happened, but it happened to people that we don't care about. Those crises are not crises. You brought up the immigration stuff with kids in cages and the situation there at immigration centers, which are still happening now, as we point out. There's plenty of issues with immigration centers. Now they're crises. It's the same crisis that was happening before, but now it just doesn't become one because they didn't clarify or they didn't put that in the category of crises. So Kayleigh McEnany and the Trump administration get to call whatever they want crises, and we're supposed to just believe it. It's the epitome of the privilege that comes with these types of folks that say, well, I didn't say it was a crisis, so you shouldn't believe that it is one at all. And enough people believe them, and there you have it. They bought their own BS.
Yeah, and like as you point out, like they're even forgetting some of the ones that they brought up before. Like, are they forgetting the great crisis of the Bowling Green massacre? Like you're forgetting crises that actually happened. And there was, the very fine people, and like you could go on and on, the Muslim ban and the massive protests against all of your insanity. Like you could consider that a crisis from your perspective. There was what happened in Kenosha, and there was, hey, the time you got COVID and we had to watch you like desperately trying to draw breath through the moldy sponge that was all that was left of your lungs at that point. There were crises to go around, man.
Was it Helsinki where he bowed down to Putin? I mean, imagine these things that happen.
Or got laughed at the UN, or apparently went abroad and insulted our soldiers from World War II. I mean, like it was years of it. Or when you nominate a guy for a Supreme Court that apparently spent all of his high school years doing bench presses, pounding beers, and trying to sexually assault women. That was kind of a crisis. There was hurricanes and there was fires. It was the seven apocalypses for years. I'm a broken man because of your crises. Kayleigh McEnany, go back under your rock.
Just remember, those crises did not affect the rich and powerful surrounding him, so therefore they weren't. That's the bottom line.
Like K-Chan just brought up, I completely forgot. Ukraine, he was impeached over it. There was a crisis about that. Yes, the hurricane in Puerto Rico. Yes, Maria was what I was referring to there. But yeah, that was devastating. And like, remember when you were like doing like free throws of paper towels and stuff? That was a crisis. Remember, whose boat is that? Is that your boat? That was a crisis. There were so many crises. Anyway. Yeah, the weird stuff with the Saudis. People are bringing up great stuff in the chat.
No, it's hard to remember all of them, and we'll see how much more time can tell because people forgot about the Bush administration. There was crisis all over the place there, but it's been long enough that we're like, oh well, he wasn't so bad, and we're gonna get there with Trump. Trust, because this is the base for that. Kayleigh McEnany and people like her going on TV and trying to change history. Isn't it weird how that keeps happening? It seems like that's kind of our protocol. We go for it and we try and change horrible things that happened and things that took place under certain folks and claim that it wasn't such a big deal at all. Enough people forget about it and go, yeah, that wasn't much of a big deal. Nothing really happened, did it? It works. Yeah. It works.
K-Chan brought up we should do the top 10 Trump crises. We might. We'll see. That's not a bad idea. Sarah says John will never finish the stories now that he's listing all the crises. No, we're good. We still have time. But anyway, yeah, he was impeached twice. You're talking about crises? You're talking about crises. Come on. Anyway. Anyway. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.